Alright, so this story starts with me, in pajamas, holding a frying pan, standing in the middle of my street at 2 a.m., surrounded by cheering neighbors. Sounds like a victory moment, right? Yeah, not so much when you hear how it all went down. It started with a noise. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the most exciting thing that happens is someone's dog getting loose. But that night, I was jolted awake by this loud, metallic clanging sound. At first, I thought it was just the wind knocking over someone's trash cans, but it didn't stop. It kept going, like someone was rummaging through them. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but then I heard something else. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps right outside my window. Now, I'm not exactly the brave type. My first instinct was to pull the covers over my head and pretend I didn't hear anything. But then I remembered that my car was parked in the driveway. My new car. The one I'd been saving up for years to buy. If someone was messing with it, I wasn't about to let that slide. So, I got out of bed, grabbed the closest weapon I could find, which happened to be a frying pan, and peeked out the window. Sure enough, there was a guy in a hoodie, crouched next to my car, fiddling with something near the door handle. I panicked. What was I supposed to do? Call the cops? Yell at him? My half-asleep brain decided on option 3, confront him like some kind of deranged vigilante. I burst out of my front door, waving the frying pan like a lunatic. Hey, what the hell are you doing? I shouted. The guy froze, clearly not expecting anyone to come charging out of their house in pajamas. For a second, I thought he was going to run, but then he did something I didn't expect. He stood up and started walking toward me. Let me tell you, every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run back inside. But at this point, I was committed. I gripped the frying pan tighter and yelled, "Don't come any closer." The guy stopped, raised his hands, and said, "Relax, man. I'm not here to hurt anyone." "Then what are you doing messing with my cars?" I demanded. He sighed and said, "I wasn't messing with your car. I was trying to catch that." He pointed toward the bushes near the driveway, and that's when I saw it, a raccoon. A huge raccoon, sitting on top of my trash can, holding what looked like an entire sandwich in its little paws. What does a raccoon have to do with anything? I asked, confused. "I'm with animal control," the guy explained. "We've been getting complaints about this raccoon causing damage in the neighborhood. I've been trying to trap it for weeks. Now, here's where things get embarrassing." Instead of apologizing or thanking him for doing his job, I doubled down. "If you're with animal control, where's your uniform? Or your truck? How do I know you're not just some weirdo making up stories?" He rolled his eyes and said, "Because my truck is parked at the end of the street, and I got the paperwork to prove it. But if you don't believe me, fine. I'll just leave." He turned to walk away, and I felt this weird mix of guilt and stubbornness. I didn't want to admit I might have been wrong, but I also didn't want to let the raccoon get away. So I said, "Wait. If you're really with animal control, what's your plan for catching it?" He paused, clearly annoyed, and said, "The plan was to lure it into the trap with bait, but he gave me a pointed look, scared it off." I looked over at the raccoon, which was now halfway up a tree, still clutching its sandwich. "Well, what do we do now?" I asked. The guy sighed. "We wait. It'll come back down eventually." So, there we were. Me, the animal control guy, and my frying pan, standing awkwardly in my driveway at 2 a.m., staring at a raccoon in a tree. It didn't take long for my neighbors to notice. One by one, lights started turning on, and people began peeking out their windows. A couple of them even came outside to see what was going on. "Is everything all right?" Mrs. Henderson from next door asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just dealing with the raccoon situation." By the time the raccoon finally climbed down, half the neighborhood was outside, watching like it was some kind of late-night entertainment. The animal control guy managed to catch it with a net, and everyone started clapping and cheering like we'd just won the Super Bowl. I should have felt relieved, maybe even proud, but instead, I just felt like an idiot. I turned a simple raccoon capture into a full-blown neighborhood spectacle. To make matters worse, as the guy was packing up his gear, he looked at me and said, "Next time, maybe let the professionals handle it." Fair point. The next morning, I woke up to find a plate of cookies on my porch with a note from Mrs. Henderson that said, "Thanks for protecting the neighborhood." So I guess in the end, I became the accidental hero of the block. But every time I see a raccoon now, I can't help but cringe a little.